in front of the circuit judge to the judge makes the determination as to whether or not that self-defense was justified or not. So there's a tiered approach, I guess you could say, or several steps in that approach in trying to reach that place where you're trying to find justice and the truth.
Okay, one last question. So if the young black man was 18 and he was carrying a gun openly in the neighborhood on a public sidewalk, and this drill sergeant was not armed, but saw that he was armed, went back into his home and came back out and shot him because he perceived him to be a threat, how would the law handle that?
That doesn't sound justified. I mean, the mere possession of a gun does not necessarily imply a threat. So I'd find that to be, I mean, just, you're asking my opinion.
Right.
I mean, in my opinion, that would be, that man should be charged because
Okay.
he not only had to, if he perceives a threat, go home, go sit in your house, get away, call the
Right.
police, but you don't go back to your house and go find some, kid walking down the road and shoot him. That's not, I think I know which side I want to be on that one.
Okay, one last question.
Sure. Okay.
I thought that was my last question, but how will people know where they can carry, how they can carry, whether they can carry openly if this law passes, if there's no training?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know other than the, media. It's a hot issue. I mean, it's going to get covered. So you're going to, the public's going to be hearing about this. But to your point, that's not training. I mean, that's just,
Right.
do you trust the internet? Do you trust the newspaper? Not always. So,
Right.
yeah, so I understand your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator from Charleston, Senator Kempson. What purpose
yield.
you ask?
Thank you, Senator. So this amendment would eliminate some of the criminal offenses that individuals may have committed. It would eliminate them from being unqualified or not qualified to carry a concealed weapon or concealable weapon. Is that correct?
That's right.
So why would we want to remove people who've committed crimes from carrying? Why would we want to enable convicted criminals to carry? Why would we want to enable them to carry concealable weapons?
I cannot imagine why we would want to do that. But there was a point about this that I think is important to make that I failed to make earlier about this whole kind of discussion around your rights to carry a gun, and that these are not law-abiding citizens. These are convicted lawbreakers that are going to be allowed to carry. And even under the House bill, it will. This one just goes even further. The amendment takes it even further. There's a provision in there. It's in I guess it's the last paragraph in that section that we've been talking about, that makes it clear that if the criminal conviction is expunged, or if you receive a pardon for that criminal conviction, then your gun rights are restored under state law. So even for those that are concerned about the guy who, he was a 18-year-old kid and he committed this offense and now he's 48 and he wants to go hunting with his grandchild or whatever the reason he wants to now possess a gun, there's a pathway to do that. This specifically provides that you could seek a pardon, and if it's justified, and they're regularly granted, very regularly granted, you seek a pardon that would restore your gun rights, and you have a pathway to getting those gun rights back. So, I don't want to strike that, and this amendment strikes that out of the bill. So I like that provision. I think that's a good thing, that at some point in the future, if you've demonstrated that you now are a law-abiding citizen, that you can get your gun rights back.
Well, Senator, what is the name of this bill?
I know it's been constitutional. Yeah, constitutional carry. Yeah.
So the bill is named constitutional carry. So I guess it ostensibly, at least the authors believe it's in conformity with the Constitution. And so you're a lawyer, so I want to ask you a couple of questions about what the Constitution actually says when it comes to the Second Amendment.
So one of the crimes, I want to stop you right there, but one of the crimes that you would be able to possess, that you could be convicted of, is impersonating a lawyer, which I've been accused of. So go ahead, ask your question.
They probably want the lawyers to be unarmed as opposed to those who impersonate a lawyer, probably. But have you ever heard of a Supreme Court justice named Antonin Scalia?
Certainly have. Just finished a biography on him. So yeah.
You finished his biography. Why did you read his biography?
He's just an interesting character. You know, he's probably one of the greatest constitutional minds in a generation or so.
I would agree with that. I'd go further, perhaps in the entire history of the court.
Probably 100 years at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
And are you familiar with the Heller decision that Antonin Scalia authored?
I'm not nearly as familiar with it as you are. So be gentle with your questions. I know what it involves, but I can't remember the
But Heller
details.
Heller did several things. Again, certainly the most conservative justice of our generation. Certainly the greatest, in my mind, the greatest justice in our generation, and maybe even forever. Because Ruth Bader Ginsburg famously said, all of us are textualists now, because, and the reason he was so great is he moved not just the conservatives on the court, but actually the liberals on the court towards a textualist method of construing and interpreting the Constitution, which grounds the justices in what the original meaning and principle in the Constitution embodies, and take that principle and apply it to the case in hand, as opposed to making stuff up out of bold cloth, out of thin air, which the court had been used to doing. And so to me, that's why he's such a great justice, because he actually had an impact across all spectrums of liberal to conservative justices, and made us all textualists now.
I believe he taught Ruth Bader Ginsburg how to shoot.
He did. He
Yeah.
took her, they
Yeah,
hunted
yeah,
together
they
on a
hunted
regular
together,
basis. So in the Heller decision, several things it established. It was the first Second Amendment case really in decades. And the Heller decision established that, number one, the Second Amendment right was a personal right. Are you aware that many folks who aren't so supportive of the right to bear arms argued for years, for decades, including professors, that the Second Amendment right was a right that vested only with militia, not with individuals? You're aware of that?
Yes, I am.
And so he clarified that. It was an 800-page opinion going through the history of gun ownership, gun rights. And another thing it determined or concluded was that the weapons that it protected were weapons of common usage. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
So you don't have a right to own an A1 Abrams tank or an F-35 fighter or a grenade launcher, but you do have a right to possess pistols, shotguns, even AR-15s, because there's 16 million of them in circulation and they're in common usage. So it's a personal right, but going to this amendment, the third thing in Heller, again, this isn't some left-wing justice. This is the most conservative justice in many generations, maybe forever. The third thing in Heller, did you know, was the Second Amendment right is for law-abiding, responsible citizens. Law-abiding, responsible citizens. So the most conservative justice of our generation in Heller says these folks who've committed these crimes, they're not law-abiding people. Their right doesn't attach. The right is I mean, depending on the crime, it's not a petty crime. But So do you believe, understanding that background, do you see how in the background of the Heller decision and Scalia's masterful opinion that established the Second Amendment rights personal, it's for weapons in common usage, but it's also for law-abiding, responsible people. And then in 2020, did you know in 2022, Justice Thomas, in the Bruin decision, reiterated this law-abiding, responsible people test. And so would these offenders, criminals who have committed these offenses, would they meet the law-abiding, responsible person test that Scalia established, that Thomas, probably yet another great conservative justice, confirmed just 2 years ago? Would they meet that test?
And well, I don't know, but I think if we were to adopt the amendment, we're saying they meet that test. We're, as a General Assembly, as the representatives of our friends and neighbors back home, are drawing that line and saying, we're okay with this. We're okay with these category of convicted criminals to carry concealed or unconcealed wherever they want to go, except what's strictly prohibited in the statute. So that would be the line we are drawing. Now, whether that line would be subject to challenge, and based on Heller, could someone challenge that, and say this is unreasonable, or it's unconstitutional? I haven't really thought about it. It hadn't crossed my mind, but I don't know that. You never know, and we litigate. It's become kind of the more commonplace steps on controversial issues that this General Assembly has passed, that they end up in court. That's something we're watching happen more and more as the years go by.
But these are convicted criminals that we're talking about, right?
Correct. That's right.
So they certainly aren't law-abiding citizens, right?
They're not.
And in Heller, the majority set opinion, authored by Scalia, said the Second Amendment is for law-abiding citizens, not for law-breaking citizens. Thomas just a couple of years ago says the same thing in Bruin. Law-abiding citizens, not for law-breaking citizens. So this is called, what's the name of this act again? The constitutional carry?
That's correct.
Does that imply that it's conforming to the Constitution? It does to me. Does it to you?
That's a great question, Senator. I said, these bumper sticker names that these bills get.
Well, this is not complying with the Constitution and the way that's the most conservative justice in multiple generations, the two most conservative justices in multiple generations, have construed and applied the Constitution and interpreted it. And so I don't even know why we call it constitutional carry when you're putting things like this to let criminals have guns. I know you're.
Yeah.
So I'm against the amendment. I'm on your side, but I think it's important to understand that we need to be cognizant of what the court has determined, what the constitutional jurisprudence in this area of law is, and it clearly is. The Second Amendment is for responsible. In my mind, that's the concealed weapons permit training. Law-abiding, in my mind, you're not a convict, you're not a convicted criminal, people. And if we adopt this, we are really adopting something that is not consistent with the Constitution as construed by Antonin Scalia and Justice Thomas in majority opinions on the court.
Thank you for your questions.
Senator from Collin, and what purpose do you rise?
The senator would yield.
I'll yield.
Yield for questions?
I will.
Questions. Senator yields for questions.
Senator, some of the senator from Charleston's questions brought to mind several issues. And if you would follow with me, and I think he makes some valid points. Did you know I agree with most of some of the question and his reasoning, except for that Antonin Scalia was one of the best jurists on the Supreme Court, especially after that hunt with Bush's father and the vote the next week to disavow Al Gore presidency, but that's just me personally. Did you know I felt like that?
No, I didn't know that.
Well, I just wanted to make
That's
sure
good to
you knew
know.
that.
Thank you.
That took him down a couple of notches in my book, but his reasoning does make sense. Um, as a former solicitor in this state, um, what do you see in reviewing this bill in its totality without the amendments that it accomplishes for the good of South Carolina when those that have not even gone out to get a CWP will now be able to grab up a gun and go outside and carry it down the street?
So, and, I hope to focus my comments on the amendment, but I understand, I mean, I'm up here, I'm willing to take
I'm
questions.
taking advantage of the fact that you're a solicitor.
and I
We
understand.
only have
No, no,
two,
I'm
well, one
happy
and a
to-
half
I'm happy to answer.
solicitors.
I'm happy to offer thought on it, but so, I was not in the General Assembly, but I was a criminal prosecutor when, the CWP law was proposed back in the 25 years ago, 30 years, it's a long time ago. And I was a young prosecutor, and I remember, and Jeff Young he was a classmate of mine who was in the State House, and I think he championed that bill. Became Judge Young, but I believe he championed that bill over in the House. And I remember thinking that was pretty neat because, I was a young lawyer, and I had this friend or this classmate who was in the middle of this legislative fight, was kind of following it. But, in talking to law enforcement and really just the general tone around the office, I can tell you, oh my Lord, this is going to be the end of the world as we know it. There will be blood flowing in the streets. It is going to be, it was this skies falling kind of belief. Okay. I mean, I didn't know any better. I'm just listening to others that are older and, smarter, more experienced than me. And I'm kind of thinking, well, yeah, maybe that's a problem. I wonder if that's going to work out. I mean, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And I grew up around guns. I'm real comfortable with guns. My father and grandfather trained me, since I was a little bitty guy to be careful in how you do it. So I'm blessed because of that. I'm lucky because of that. So, we take up another gun bill, a few years ago, not this one. We've taken up several along the
Right.
way. And we had the one about we're going to go into the restaurant. You remember that?
Yes.
You might have been, I'm not sure you were here for
I
that one.
remember the Ashley Hall one. That was
Yeah,
the
that
one
was, I think that was Senator Bennett's bill, I believe. But the bill was, you could have CWP if they didn't prohibit you, if they didn't put the sign up on the restaurant, you could go into a restaurant. Because previously you couldn't go into a place that served alcohol.
Right.
And you still couldn't drink, and have your gun, but you could at least go in the restaurant. And the argument was, well, you're out in a dark parking lot, maybe unfamiliar part of town. This is kind of we really need to have the protection. And the argument was, oh my gosh, it's going to be the end of the world as we know it. There's going to be blood in the streets. They're going to be shooting everybody in the restaurants. Didn't happen. Okay, didn't happen.
Yeah, but as it relates to where we're going.
I'll finish my answer, and then I'll be happy to answer another question. So, we've gone to open carry, and I started out, I don't really like this. I'm not so sure about this. I think you're going to have these yahoos walking up and down the boulevard in Myrtle Beach, scaring the mamas and the little kiddies to death, and it's not good for tourism and not good for my area. And I kind of was in that frame of mind. And so we passed it. And there was going to be blood in the streets, and it was going to be horrible, and there's going to be all these shootings, and it didn't happen. So, and the states that have reached a point now that I don't see I think this fear that is always ginned up in this debate just isn't the facts don't back it up.
Well,
So I've changed my position. I've come to believe that this is just not the big problem, that it's not going to be a big solution, and it's not going to be a big problem. I don't believe it's going to be either way. And I think as I say, I think the best part of the bill is the enhanced penalties. It might actually make our state a little bit safer.
Well, former solicitor and now senator, my question wasn't necessarily to if it's not a problem.
Oh.
My question was, what ills does it cure for South Carolinians when right now you can get a CWP and carry? So what is the urgency of open carry to protect all of South Carolina?
Well,
Please, I'm having a hard time.
I don't know that I'm here, I can give you that. I don't think it's going to have this great effect one way or the other. That's the best I can say. I just don't think it's going to have this as huge an impact. I think is a lot of it's symbolic. You know, it's important to
Right.
people. There are people that feel very strongly about this. There are people that feel very strongly against it. And I, you know, and I think that's why we're joined in this debate today, is you've just got these two sort of viewpoints, and this is the place to settle.
Solicitor, I was at another event in my district earlier this morning, and as I rode in, I heard a lot of what the senator from Spartanburg said in his questions and answers and explaining this bill. I had a couple of follow-ups, and I came and I looked at this bill, and he kept talking about the constitutional carry. Do you know how this bill changes the bumper sticker meaning of permitless carry? How are the two different? Or are they the same and we just put another tag on it?
I don't know that I mean, I think you could call it permitless carry, and it would be an accurate way to characterize it.
Okay.
But it's just, I mean, I think either label could work.
And Solicitor, excuse me, Senator,
Okay.
one of the biggest things I've heard, and I haven't heard of any officer, police officer, deputy, SLED officer, FBI agent, none of them that I come into contact with that think that this is good. One of the things that some of the more higher ups have said is that they're concerned about US versus Ohio, stop and frisk. Do you have any concerns about the implementation of that and the challenges that will come forward under US versus Ohio as it relates to an officer's right or right not to stop and frisk?
I think the next amendment addresses that. That's what I'm attempting to do, and I feel comfortable. I mean, it's as best I could do. I feel as comfortable as I can that will satisfy those concerns, because it doesn't change federal law. I mean, it doesn't change case law, and but the way it was drafted was a little, I think, maybe just left inartful, maybe just a little bit, and we can fix that.
And there is another issue that was brought to my attention by law enforcement. So this bill relates to you being able to, without a CWP and without certain criteria regarding prior crimes, criminal convictions, be able to carry a gun. Say we have the Rice Festival downtown in Colleton. You can walk down, say, for instance, officers are always paraded, walking through town just to make sure everything goes okay. So, you know, this boy, Bubba, was just arrested earlier in the summer for a criminal sexual conduct charge or a drug charge, something serious. But he's been out on bond for 2 years. He hasn't been convicted of anything. And under our Constitution and case, you remain innocent until proven guilty. The officers want to know then, will Bubba be allowed under this bill, because I've read it and I don't see it addressed, will he be allowed to carry a gun at my Rice Festival? And will the officers be able to stop him from doing that under this bill?
Well, I'm going to take your hypothetical that this young man has no prior convictions. This is the first offense, correct? So he doesn't have any other disqualifying convictions.
He's on bond.
Right, he's just on bond. I don't think there's anything in this bill that a judge, I think, as a condition of bond could
do it.
Could order him not to be in possession of any firearms. I think he can.
But is there anything in here to protect those officers? You're in a small town.
Yeah, no, I mean,
They're going to harass this young man.
To your question, if he can carry lawfully anyway, you know, there's nothing in the bill that would, just being out on bond would not be a finding of guilt, so it wouldn't be disqualifying.
I can tell you that question's been asked of me
Yeah,
by
I believe you.
very conservative Republican law enforcement. And they worry about, this particular one is worried about his officers. The next question I have is, under this bill that has the bumper sticker of constitutional carry, you and I both know in our profession, on the United States versus Carroll, the container rules regarding guns and searching in containers. I don't see if you can openly carry, and I forgot the adjective there, I don't see the consistency. If you can openly carry a gun in a restaurant or down the streets, as long as you don't have a criminal conviction of certain types, why then does this bill require that you close up a gun, that same gun, in a vehicle? It just doesn't make any sense. You see what I'm saying? Section, I don't know if I put it in here. The stop and frisk part is section 31, 245. The container part is in here, and it still maintains in there, so it's not consistent for you to be able to openly carry a gun walking down the street, but you can't openly carry a gun in your vehicle.
I think, and I haven't spent, I didn't really spend a lot of time on that container section because it didn't seem problematic to me. I think it said you can keep it anywhere in your car.
No, it
It doesn't?
doesn't.
Okay.
Right now,
I thought that was
when you-
changed, but
and we can
Okay.
look over it, and I'll be glad to sit
Sure.
down with you, and maybe you can show me something. Because you would agree that when you were solicitor, a large part of your docket contained vehicle stops or traffic stops when a person had a gun under the seat or in the back seat, and they got charged.
sure.
And oftentimes, that's sometimes people that were just ignorant of the law,
Yep.
and some people that just forgot that it was there. And they ended up getting those charges, and those charges stick with them ad infinitum unless it gets, unless they get the charges expunged for whatever reason or pardon. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it would stay on their record unless it would qualify for an expungement and even if it's yeah, it'd stay on the record for sure.
Okay, so don't you think there needs to be some consistency regarding this alleged constitutionality of being able to carry your gun where you want?
Some inconsistent, well, I'm looking at, I think I found the section about the motor vehicle.
Yes.
And I think you're just making the argument that, because you're right. I mean, it says,
Yeah.
I mean, it does leave those
It makes,
certain places where it has to be in
in
the car.
other words, your constitutional rights are okay when you're walking down the street at the Rice Festival or the Water Festival
Right.
for you to openly carry a gun. But if you're in your car traveling down the highways and say Rum Gully down. So if you're traveling down Rum Gully Road or Possum Corner Road or Goose Creek, or anywhere like that, you can't have your gun sitting in your lap and you can't have your gun under the seat. This bill makes no sense. It's inconsistent. Don't you agree?
Well, I understand your argument about,
Either you agree or don't agree. I'm okay with you not agreeing.
I mean,
'Cause
it
I-
seems curious. I don't know,
I
but-
rely upon your experience being a solicitor and understanding, because y'all oftentimes are the ones that have to explain things to officers out there on the streets that are on the beat.
for sure.
And so your opinion as a solicitor is one of the most important opinions as it relates to how you interpret a bill, these
Well-
laws that we pass.
Well, I mean, I understand your argument
I
about
just-
you still have to keep it in your glove box or in the trunk, or if it's in your vehicle, it has to be stored in these places that are designated by the previous. That's existing law.
Don't
That's
you
been the
see a
existing law.
situation, don't you see a situation where someone's walking down the street with their gun and you were in your car, you just pulled up to a park and you can't get to your gun and they got theirs and pointed at you? Doesn't seem right, does it?
Well, that might be an amendment you'd wish to offer. I don't know.
Next question I have is, I went through the bond. This,
Well, and I would caution you, we have an amendment number 2, so
I-
if we could keep
I-
it focused on the amendment that's before us.
I'm going to make this quick. Did you know that in the state of South Carolina, as of last year, that if anybody in the state wants a concealed weapon permit, there's no cost to get one, but there's a cost to get a fishing permit.
I was aware of that.
And so people who really want to own a gun constitutionally or unconstitutionally, all they got to do is go get a CWP, and there's no cost to them.
That's right.
Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Martin, what purpose do you rise, sir?
To make a unanimous consent request,
State your request.
with the senator from Ori holding the floor, I would like to rework my amendment, so I would ask to withdraw my amendment so I could rework it. He wouldn't have the floor after
I don't
that.
need to hold the floor.
With you, you're making the unanimous consent with him holding the floor.
Yeah, I
With
just
you
don't want to
holding
take the
floor.
podium away from him, but I would
Okay,
like to
so
withdraw
I-
my amendment so I can rework it.
Unanimous consent is to withdraw your amendment.
Yes, sir.
Is there objection to the senator from Spartanburg, Senator Martin, withdrawing his amendment? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. We have another amendment on the desk. I would ask the reading clerk to publish the next amendment.
Next amendment is number 3 by Senator Hembry, amends the bill in section 19, strike section 2331-245.
Senator from Ori, Senator Hembry is recognized on his amendment.
Oh. I've already discussed this with you. This is the amendment I talked about. This talks about the stop and questioning of someone that is in possession of a gun. There's language in section, this is section 19 of the bill, I believe. Yes. 2331-245 refers to the code section. And this amendment only adds the words absent other articulable circumstances. So it would restore that ability for an officer to stop someone if there are circumstances that justify such a stop, separate and apart, in addition to possession of a gun. That possession of a gun alone would continue to not trigger that sort of scrutiny. You have to answer any questions.
Senator from Richland, Senator Harpoon, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Would the senator yield to a question?
I'll
Senator
yield.
Yield. Senator Yield, the question.
So you and I have dealt with this warrantless search stuff for most of our careers. And you use the term articulable circumstances.
I did.
I just sent you a case, the most recent case from our Supreme Court about the warrantless stop and search of somebody. And they use the term reasonable, articulable circumstances. Reasonable, articulable circumstances. That's the legal standard. Would you agree to amend yours?
I would. I mean, I think that further clarification of including reasonable, I think is the law anyway. We just will get it right. And that's inartful drafting on my part.
They actually say reasonable, articulable suspicion. Okay. And I just sent you the case. So whatever that standard is, would you agree to a friendly amendment to do that? I don't know the process to do that. And that would allow police officers, I'll give you an example. And I think Representative Rutherford introduced this over in the House. You're as it reads right now, in a high drug area, you strap on a gun, and under your shirt you have 3 kilos of cocaine. Police can't stop you. Because this is a shield. The bill is written now would prevent them. You having that gun makes you almost immune to being stopped.
Well, that's the entire purpose of my amendment, is to try to address that, because I don't believe that's the intention of the drafter, of the author of the bill. I think that was something that just got slipped. It was just one of those little things we caught.
It doesn't make any sense. Any of us and the lawyers, the defense lawyers or prosecutors, as written in the House bill, it doesn't make any sense because it ties the hands of police officers. Should somebody that's got a gun visible be able to be stopped if there's a reasonable, articulable suspicion? They can do that for anything except, as this bill's written, somebody having a gun strapped on them.
I think that where historically, okay, or that if somebody's walking around with a gun, that might create the reasonable, articulable suspicion.
Well, it depends
Might.
where they are.
It might be. I mean, if it's not, I mean, whether it is or did not, that's a judgment call, as you know, Fourth Amendment stuff. I think the author, obviously the author wants to say, well, no, you can't just be stopping people just because they happen to have a firearm.
Yeah, but I mean, you and I both seen cases where police officers are surveilling a drug, people selling drugs, and they see somebody taking money, handing, something,
Hand-to-hand transaction,
transaction.
open air drug
There's
market.
a way to interpret this which would prohibit the police from going and doing what they do right now.
That's the purpose of my amendment, is to try to address that
I
very
wholeheartedly
concern.
support your amendment, and if you'll just make that
I'll,
and conform it to
I just need
the
to-
latest, the 2021 case I just sent you. I texted it to you.
Senator from Darlington was up first. Yeah, Senator from Lexington, Senator Setzler.
Senator Morey,
What purpose do you rise, sir?
would you yield for a question?
yes.
Senator yields for a question.
Senator, do you know if we're going to do this, you're going to have to get the language instead of it being back and forth and it's going to comply with this court case? Let's get the exact language
my
that you're talking about
intention.
before you sit down and
My intention is to withdraw the amendment and submit a replacement amendment, and as soon as I can get it drafted.
So is that your motion,
I have
Senator?
a unanimous consent request. Unanimous consent to withdraw amendment number 3.
Is there objection to the senator from Horry withdrawing amendment number 3? Hearing no objection, so ordered. Further amendments?
Next amendment is amendment number 4 by Senator Goldfinch. Amends the bill section 10, strike section 23, 31, 220, subsection A, item 1, and inserts.
Wait. Excuse me. Senator from Georgetown, what purpose do you rise, sir?
There, Mr. President.
All right.
Speak to the amendment.
We're glad to have you back. So Senator is recognized on his amendment.
I know. Thank you, Mr. President. I am not going to say this is a simple amendment, which is the death knell of simple amendments. Currently, under the bill as proposed, the current list of places for which you cannot carry a firearm are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, go through the list. Somewhere about halfway down that list is where we started about 5 or 6 years ago, as I recall, with the placard bill. Y'all remember that? Where a business could put a placard up and could deny a concealed weapons permit holder the ability to pass by the placard, to go into your place of business, which I was a little conflicted on at the time, quite honestly. There's a balancing of the equities there between the business owner and the guy that wants to defend himself and his family, assuming he's a good guy. But that ultimately passed. Since then, I have completely lost my faith in that system, as we've seen more and more shootings from bad guys in places behind placards, movie theaters, for instance. I have also been attempting to think through this scenario, this solution, a solution to a hiccup that I feel on this bill, which is how do we encourage training, incentivize training, but not mandate it? So what this bill does is exactly those two things. It changes the placard law that says the only people that can go behind this placard are people with CWPs. So under the current bill, nobody goes behind the placard. Only open carry, or not open carry people, not concealed weapons permit carry people can go behind the placard. Nobody goes into the business if the placard is placed on your business. With this amendment, it would allow people who want to go get the additional training to be the good guy, to get behind the placard, to defend against the bad guys. It would encourage, incentivize without mandating training, and it would give everybody an opportunity to defend themselves and their families from the bad guys if you're behind the placard.
Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Kimbrell, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Mr. President, see if the senator from Georgetown would yield for a couple of questions.
Senator Yield.
Sure.
Well,
Senator
first off,
Yields.
Senator, we're glad you're back. So I know
Thank you.
that's kind of a question, kind of a statement, but do you know we're glad you're back and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you back. I do have a couple of questions about this, and I understand what you're trying to get at, but I would say, do you not have some concerns that this would essentially create two classes of gun ownership? I mean, that's what you're getting at, right? Creating two different tiers of gun ownership?
I've seen that NRA talking points on that. They sent them to me about 10 minutes ago too.
Well, I haven't seen the talking points. I'm just asking myself. I mean,
That's the answer is no, because right now under the bill, it creates two classes of gun ownership. Right now, we have no ability to defend ourselves as good guys behind the placard. We are subject to the bad guy's discretion behind the placard. Under the bill, we are subject to the bad guy's discretion behind the placard. From your perspective, Senator, I can argue both sides. But from your perspective, Senator, and my perspective, I want to give gun advocates, gun rights advocates, gun holders, people that are willing to carry a weapon and go get the training, the ability to defend themselves and their family from the bad guy carrying a gun behind the placard. If that creates two separate classes of gun ownership, so be it. Go get your training. Okay. But right now, the current bill doesn't allow you to defend yourself behind the placard.
And I understand that, but don't you feel, though, that if we do this, you're going to have a lot of folks who are already against the idea of constitutional carry, just popping up these placards to force you to go back to the permit anyways. So essentially, you're gutting the whole purpose of Constitutional Carry Act in the first place, right? I mean, does it not have that same effect? If you're basically creating two tiers, you're gutting the purpose of constitutional carry.
No, not at all. Right now, you cannot carry behind the placard. Right now, under the bill that we're advancing to try to expand gun rights, you cannot carry behind the placard. All we're doing is expanding gun rights, if you want to look at it from that perspective, so that somebody good can carry behind the placard under the amendment. If that creates two different classes of gun carriers, so be it. But I want a good guy to be able to fight off the bad guy if that happens.
We disrespectfully disagree on this, but I appreciate your answering the questions.
I don't think we do, Senator. I think this is unfortunately something more than that.
Senator from Pickens, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Yield for a question.
Sure.
Senator Yields for question.
The way you've got this written, and I looked at it briefly, the way you've got it written, that's the only option a business owner would have, right? To have this sign up. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand your
Well,
question,
what I'm
sir.
saying is, and I had a conversation with a member of a church that said, if we pass the constitutional carry, what are my options? And he said, what I would like to do at the church is say that if somebody has a concealed weapons permit, allow them to carry in the church, but not, if they don't have one, not carried in the church. In other words, he wanted to create his own two classes there.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Senator, but my reading of the bill as written would still exclude people from carrying in churches, even if you're open carry.
What he's trying to do is set up so that if you have a weapons permit, concealed weapons permit, that
You would.
he's not going to come up with a shopping list of who could and couldn't carry in there.
Right.
He's saying anybody that's got a concealed weapons permit is allowed to carry in the church. But if you don't, in other words, this is kind of a variance of what you're doing here.
So I suspect if you put a placard the way that a bar, a restaurant, a movie theater puts a placard up on the church, I suspect that you may be, again, that would be, to me, that would be tacit approval by the church of anybody that had a CWP would be able to carry in there without having the list of approved people.
I guess what I'm asking is, would you take this amendment that you've got and kind of make it an optional amendment where they could do it either all or part of it?
But it would, under your scenarios, Senator, if they put the placard up, it would work.
But if you put the placard up like it is, it's mandatory. But you could.
To have the CWP. Yeah, it would be mandatory to have the CWP if the placard was up. You could not go beyond the placard without a CWP.
But you're saying you can't put this placard, you can't just put no guns at all in there, you know?
No, well, I mean, under the current bill without the amendment, that's what the placard essentially says, is no guns at all. With the amendment, you allow CWP holders to carry behind the placard. So a church could theoretically put up a placard, which would be tacit approval to CWP holders.
I guess what I'm asking is, could you not let the business owner make that decision and say no guns at all, or put this placard up? In other words, give them an either or option on that, where it's not either all or nothing. That's what I'm asking.
Well, I think that's, I mean, so the question is, make sure I understand your question. The question is, can we allow a business owner to disallow anybody from carrying a firearm?
Yeah, the way it, and I may be wrong, maybe I'm not looking at this amendment correctly, but this is the new placard right here.
Yeah.
You don't have the old placard. So the old placard would be, nobody can carry in there.
Right.
This one says that the new placard says if you've got a CWP, you can carry, and that the business owner can't stop you from coming in with CWP. Am I wrong about that?
No, that's correct. That is defeating the purpose of the amendment. The purpose of the amendment is to encourage good guys to get behind the placard with guns. That's the whole
I
purpose
like
of
what
it.
you've got here. I just say that, but if a business owner wanted to say no guns whatsoever,
Yeah, I got you.
you don't have that option anymore.
But that option would be the bill. If you want no guns behind the placard at all, then you need to vote for the bill as is and vote my amendment down.
Well, I'm saying give them the option of that.
Yeah, again, I understand the purpose, but I
Either
respectfully,
or.
yeah, I respectfully think that defeats the purpose of the amendment. But I understand the purpose of the question.
Senator from Anderson, what purpose do you rise, sir?
See
Senator
if the
Cash.
senator would yield for a question or two.
Senator, yield for questions.
Sure.
Senator yields.
All right, so just zeroing in on the effect this would have on churches is what is my question, Senator. So I think the way that the law is currently written, if you want to carry in a church, you have to have the approval of the leadership of the church,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So would that still be in effect, even with your amendment, that you would still have to have the approval of the leadership of the church, or is this going to gut that part of the law as well?
The simple answer is if the church puts up a placard, that's the approval. That's the approval, because the placard literally would say under the amendment, only CWP holders beyond this point. Now, if the church chose not to put up a placard, then I'm giving you a legal opinion from the podium here, which is dangerous, but without the placard, the church, I think it would revert back to the church would have to give you, written permission. So a church could have the option, put up a placard. Anybody in the church that has a CWP could carry into the church. Church doesn't have to put up a placard. They can just give out permission slips like they do now.
Well, I would be fine with that if that's the correct interpretation of what this is going to turn out to be, because I'm not an attorney either. And so we're talking about the hypothetical of your amendment and how that's going to affect church.
Yeah,
carry.
all right. So I'll talk through it with you, walk through it with you as best I can, Senator. Haven't had enough caffeine for bar exam questions today, but so the current law, the current bill, let's just start with the bill. Yeah, let's start with the bill, okay? The current bill as written disallows somebody from carrying it in a church without the permission slip, okay? The amendment as written says if you have a CWP placard, the placard shall say no guns beyond this point except CWP holders. Ergo, if the church puts a placard up, the church is giving tacit approval to CWP holders to carry within the church. Does that follow?
I follow.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was being clear because it's been a long day already, Senator.
But I think if I understand you correctly, you're saying if the church doesn't put a placard up, then it reverts to the way the law is currently written, which is you have to have the permission of the leadership of the church.
I think that's exactly right, Senator.
Well, I hope you're correct.
Senator from Greenville, Senator Corbin, what purpose do you rise?
Senator, yield for a question.
Sure.
Senator, you've had several conversations. Senator, did you know? You have had several conversations with several other members of the body about the placards. And I'm just having a little confusion here. Currently, you use the illustration of a theater, okay?
Of a what?
Of a movie theater.
Oh, yeah,
I believe
okay.
you used that illustration. Could we use the illustration of a bank? Would that fit your description? public accommodations business, like a restaurant or a bank or whatever, because, a lot of banks will have the placard up. And trust me, I'm on your side. There's nobody in here. I'm a co-sponsor of Senator Martin's bill. I'm the Second Amendment guru. So but I want to make sure I know what you're getting at. So currently, if a bank has a placard up, okay, use another example. Okay, say a restaurant has a placard up. This got the picture of the gun with the circle around it, and they no concealed weapons. Okay, so they've got that up. If you have a CWP, basically what you're saying is, if I understand it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you can just ignore that and go on in.
Under the amendment.
Under this amendment, you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, correct, but the placards would be new under the new placards would say no guns except CWPs.
Okay, that's where my confusion lies. So lies because I didn't. I've had trouble with my computer today, so maybe I'm not getting the whole amendment. So what you're basically doing is adding a new type of placard that would be available to businesses that would say or imply no guns allowed unless you have a CWP, which you can then come in.
Right, Senator, on page 2B, the posting by the employer, owner, or person in legal possession of control of a sign stating no concealable weapons allowed unless possessed by a person with a valid CWP. That's what the placard would have to say.
Okay, so I'm just not showing on my computer. So basically, we're coming up with a new placard that's saying, in a nutshell, bad guys, keep your, thank you. Okay. Thank you bad guys, keep your guns out. Good guys with a CWP, you're welcome to come in.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, but it's not infringing upon the private property rights of a business at all.
That's why, Senator, there's some, and I debated this in my mind too, how we dealt with, balancing the equities of the private business owner and the person who is going in the restaurant with their family or their friends. And the way I came down on this is it couldn't be public and private businesses because, private business could be anything. Even a private club, right? You can dissuade anything you want. A public accommodations business is a defined term, a legally defined term. Our Supreme Court's talked about it multiple times. It has a little bit of a lesser, let's just, for the simple sake of this debate, a little bit of a lesser right. Okay, the business owners have a little bit of a lesser right because they're inviting anybody in. They can't discriminate, for instance, right? A private club can discriminate. A public accommodations business cannot. So that's why, I didn't want to take it to the extent that a private business would have to allow a CWP, because that seems like we're rebalancing the equities there. A public accommodations business, somebody that invites everybody in that case, I'd like to be able to defend my family and my friends.
I'm with you 100%, Senator. I think it's wise in this day and age to defend yourself and be that with a firearm. It's the most logical way. I have a friend who has a hardware store, and on his door of the hardware store, he has a sticker or a placard very similar to the ones that said, you can't bring your gun in, except his says CWP carriers, welcome here.
Right.
So tell me sort of the difference between this and what he's doing.
That wouldn't change at all, Senator. He keeps his placard because the law would be CWP or open carry, constitutional carry. You can carry either one in there under that
because
case.
He's doing the same thing, basically.
Right.
I get that.
Right.
Because you and I both know that the criminals, those that are out to do harm to society, are going to ignore all the laws regardless. That doesn't matter.
To me, that's the shooting gallery, Senator, is a place where all the bad guys have the guns and the good guys don't. That's the worst place to be.
Right. Senator, one last question. Quite frankly, there's members in our own caucus who may not be so enthusiastic about this piece of legislation. Do you think this, if it passes, would in any way diminish the opportunity for success in any way?
Senator, I think this is this is an amendment that could bring a few people on board that might not have otherwise been on board, because it also incentivizes some training, right? It encourages people to go out and get training that want to go beyond the placard. And that's something, honestly, that I struggle with. I am, as y'all know, a big 2A supporter. I own my own gun range. I don't know many people that can, like, and Senator Martin's been there. Senator from Spartanburg's been there. I mean, honestly, I own probably more guns than most all of y'all combined. Probably shouldn't say that in public.
I doubt
But-
that.
I don't know, Senator. I don't know. The senator from Spartanburg shaking his head in agreement with me. But my point is, training is always a good thing. Now, whether or not it's constitutionally mandated, I think that's a real solid debate. And I think we've had a lot of that debate today. But incentivizing training, I don't think anybody can disagree with incentivizing training. And it's a real incentive for people in here that may be on the fence. Go get some training and you can go beyond that placard, Senator. That's the whole purpose of the amendment, honestly. Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Senator from Richland, what purpose do you rise? So did you,
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator yield for a question?
Senator yields for question.
Senator, what about doctors' offices? What if you are a doctor? What if you are a psychiatrist? And you think it is in the best interest of your office and your staff to keep anyone out with a concealed weapon? Because you do know that everyone who commits a criminal act doesn't wake up that morning as a criminal,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you do know that there's some people, because of the emotions of a moment or the emotions of a situation, would do something criminal and then they become a criminal.
Sure.
They may have been to church that Sunday, Bible study that Wednesday,
Yeah, have a mental break.
or some emotional episode.
Sure.
And so what if you're a doctor's office? What if you are a psychiatrist and you specialize in marital counseling?
Sure.
And you think it is in your best interest to keep anyone out of your office with the weapon? Your amendment would not allow that to happen if you have a concealed weapon permit. So this good person, John Doe, wakes up in the morning, concealed weapon permit with the church Sunday, Bible study on Wednesday, had breakfast with his family on, and he goes to a counselor, and he and his wife counsel. She decides after all the counseling, she still wants to divorce him.
Mhm.
And he pulls out his concealed weapon and just go ballistic.
Sure.
Your amendment would not prohibit him from bringing that concealed weapon in that office, correct?
That's correct, but I also think my amendment wouldn't stop him from bringing that weapon into the office.
Yeah.
I mean, either way, I think, look, as you know, Senator, we all know that there is a large number of people that ignore that placard. There is a large number of people that ignore that placard. And if they're going to commit a heinous act, they're going to commit a heinous act. I would certainly hope that a good guy would be there to help with that situation.
Yeah, Senator, but my concern, and I would agree, listen, if someone has devious intent and they want to bring a weapon, they would do that. But we are talking about the good guy with a concealed weapon that he normally carries with him everywhere. And when he enters that office, he has absolutely no intent of doing anything criminal.
Sure.
No intent of committing any harm to anyone.
Mhm.
But because of an emotional situation that does not go his way, he loses it. And his weapon is on him. Can't you give the doctor's office the right to protect themselves and protect their staff? Who do you think this concealed weapon carrier is protecting by going into a doctor's office with his concealed weapon on that? If the folk in the doctor's office says, we think it's in our best interest that no one enters this building with a weapon, what you're saying is we know better than you, doctor.
No.
Well, what you're telling him is that we know how to keep you safe
No.
better than you know how to keep you safe.
Look, I understand that not everybody's a gun guy, but if I was a psychiatrist dealing with mentally unstable people, I would certainly be carrying a gun. So,
But would you want all of your patients entering with guns?
if they
I
have,
mean, if you're a psychiatrist, you want everyone sitting on your couch with a gun?
no, I don't. But again, I mean, we live with it every single day. There are people walking around us all the time, every day with guns that you don't know anything about. That's either a psychiatrist's office, or that's a doctor's office, or that's a bank, and they walk right past the placards.
Second example.
Yeah.
What if you are a school employee, and the school, you have a metal detector all the students go through along with staff, and the school's policy is that no one brings a concealed weapon. What you're saying is that if you are a concealed weapon permit carrier.
No. Schools are specifically excluded.
So schools are exempt from this?
Yeah, I would have to look back at the original bill and the original law, but there's a list of places that are exempted.
Churches are too. I think Senator from Anderson and I just talked about that, and he
but
and
schools
he's
are,
chair. But doctors'
courthouses,
offices are not.
Public buildings, schools, courthouse. I don't have the entire list in front of me, but there's
Well, let us stick with the first example. The doctor's office, the marital counselor, the psychiatrist's office. They will not be exempt from that.
Again, Senator, I don't have the list. I don't think doctor's office is on that list. If somebody wants to correct me,
Would you be comfortable adding it?
Sir?
Would you be comfortable adding?
If you want to add it, that's fine with me.
I just think anybody that deals with emotional people, anyone that deals with emotional people may feel like they have to do what is necessary to protect themselves and their staff.
Sure, if you want to put in that amendment, I think that makes sense.
Senator from Pickens, then I come to Senator from Clarendon, then I'll come to you. What person?
2 questions.
Senator Yield for questions. Senator Yields.
If this amendment passes, Duke Energy, they got a power plant on Kiowee. Can they stop somebody from coming in there with a weapon?
Can Duke Energy's power plant stop somebody from coming in with a weapon?
Yeah, in other words, there's no weapons allowed on site at Duke Energy.
Because it's a power plant?
Well, I mean,
Or because Duke
that's an
Energy
example. There's plenty of industry that does that. I'm saying,
But my question is it because Duke Energy places a placard up, or is it because it's specifically enumerated in statute? I don't know the answer to that.
I think it's their policy.
Okay, well, if it's a policy, then yeah, I mean, the amendment's in effect. If it's a policy, right?
So Duke would not be able to stop somebody with the CWP from coming on site.
Now, again, this gets into the same question as the doctor. I mean, there were lobbyists in the lobby in the last debate that were, lobbying for various industries to come about, and this guy should be included and this guy shouldn't be included.
Well, I would encourage you to have an either or type sticker, like I mentioned a minute ago.
All right, thank you.
Senator from Clarendon, then I'll come to the senator from Lake.
Yield for a question, maybe two.
Senator Yields for questions. Senator Yields.
Thank you. Senator, I want to make sure that I heard correctly, or maybe I misunderstood, but when you were entertaining questions from the senator from Greenville, Senator Corbin, if I heard correctly, he asked you in reference to this placard that if a business, say, let's say maybe a hotel or whatever, if they had a placard saying no concealed weapons allowed, I think he asked you if somebody had a concealed weapon permit, they could ignore that placard. And I think you told him, yes, they could, but that's not what this amendment says, does it? Or did I misunderstand yours?
Senator, I'm sorry, I just had a brain fog, epiphany. Thank you very much, Senator. It's not a public accommodations business, Senator, so it would not be. I'm sorry for directing. It has to be a public accommodations business for this to account for. So that scenario wouldn't. Okay, sorry.
So
Back to your question.
what I'm asking, I think the senator from Greenville asked you if a business had a placard that said no concealed weapons allowed.
Yeah.
I think he asked you, but if a person has, no weapons allowed, I'm sorry. But I think he asked you if a person has a concealed weapon permit, can they ignore that placard? And I think you told him yes, but I don't think that's what the amendment is saying.
No. The placard would not. The new placard on the amendment says no. I'm paraphrasing, but no weapons except CWP.
Okay, so the business.
So you're not ignoring. I'm sorry, but you're not ignoring the placard. You're you're within,
Okay.
you're pursuant to law.
So the placard would say, basically, no concealed weapons allowed unless you
No.
have a CWP?
No, so under this bill, let's just call it constitutional carry, okay?
Mhm.
No open carry, no open constitutional carry, only concealed weapons.
Right.
In other words, you got to have training to go beyond the placard.
Right. That's, I think we're saying the same thing. So they could have a placard.
Yeah.
Saying.
Only CWP holders beyond
Right.
this.
Okay.
That,
Right.
did I say that better? Only CWP holders beyond this placard.
Okay, thank you.
You've been very patient. Senator from Lexington, Senator Sutcliffe, what purpose do you rise?
See if the senator will yield.
Senator yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
Senator yields for questions.
Senator, we've been talking about a lot of things, churches and movie theaters. But what about the gentleman from Oconee County who spends his life building his office supply business? And he wants to put up a placard. It's a retail store.
Okay.
Or you got somebody in Cherokee County who's got a retail milk facility. Or you got a lawyer's office. Or you got a beauty salon. You're saying if they got a CPW permit, that these businesses don't have the right, when they put their life and their business and their money into it, to say you can't enter my business if you're carrying a gun. Is that what we're saying to the public of South Carolina?
No, if it's a public accommodations business, that's what the amendment says. But if it's a private business, then no. If it's a public accommodations business in your scenario under a
So how are you
retail,
going to define public accommodation?
it's defined, the Supreme Court's taken it up multiple times, but basically those are things like restaurants, banks, things where the public are welcomed in to be served. So
Well,
again,
These retail businesses are welcoming
Yeah.
the public.
yeah, they are. Those would be, under your scenario, those would be public accommodations businesses. And Senator, that's what I was getting at in the beginning of this. There's always a balancing of the equities here. This is what we have to do in this body. And the balancing of the equities are, in this case, my rights and their rights. My rights as a concealed weapons permit holder that has gone and gotten training. In this case, my rights are paramount to the rights of the business owner. That's down and dirty, as clean and as honest as I can say. But in the case of a private business, the private business owner, his rights are paramount to the concealed weapons permit holder. At some point in time, we have to draw the line of distinction and say somebody's rights are paramount to the others.
Senator from Anderson, Senator Cash, what purpose do you rise, sir?
See if the senator would answer a question.
Sure.
Senator yield for questions. Senator yields.
Senator, I think you've put forward a very thought-provoking amendment, obviously. And I don't know that I'm ready to vote on it. So I'm just going to ask Senator if you might be amenable to carrying it over.
Sure. How much longer do we need to talk about it? How many minutes?
Check.
Senator, will you hold your motion? We got some more questions.
Well, you got the floor.
Oh, I do have the floor.
So Senator from Richland, Senator Devine, what purpose do you rise?
Would the senator yield for a couple questions?
Senator yields. Senator yields, sir. Senator yields for question? Sure. Yeah.
Thank
Senator
you,
yields.
Senator. I do understand your amendment, and I think I understand. Are you saying the premise behind your amendment is because someone has a CWP, they have gone through the regular requisite checks, and so they should be granted the ability to continue to carry the gun, even if the property owner does not allow that?
No, not necessarily. It's just in the past, there's never been this option. I'm not sure if a property owner would allow it or not. I think that's an assumption that we're making that I'm not sure that we can make. But I mean, me as the property owner, if I'm a property owner of a public accommodations business, and my choice is to allow nobody with guns or to allow a well-trained group of people with guns to have guns. I personally choose the well-trained group of people because I know that the bad guys are carrying guns on my premises. That's just me. I know that's not everybody's personal opinion. That's just me. And, the people that disagree with that premise should vote against the amendment. The people that agree with that premise should vote for it.
Senator, did you know that in 2022, SLED revoked 1,489 CWPs?
I believe it.
And then in 2023, they revoked 1,605 CWPs.
I believe it. People don't pay their people don't pay their renewal fees. People let them go all the time.
Okay, so if someone has had a CWP and they have the requisite checks, but sometimes they get revoked, do you think those folks, how would the public accommodations owner know whether or not someone is still has a right to have a CWP?
Yeah, and it's the same way now, Senator. You wouldn't if I walk past the placard with my concealed weapon today, you wouldn't know it. If I walk past it tomorrow after this bill and this amendment passes, you wouldn't know it. The only hope is, I mean, we pass laws for the good guys most of the time because the bad guys are going to break those laws. And the only hope is that the good guy is going to look and say, oh, I've got an open constitutional carry here. I can't walk past that sign. That's our hope. The only guys that will be able to walk past that sign would be the CWP, the guys that have had the additional training. That's the hope. The bad guys are probably going to walk past it anyway, as we all know.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator from Greenville, Senator Allen, what purpose do you rise?
See if the senator will yield.
Sure.
For questions. Senator yields for questions.
Senator, one thought passes my mind regarding forcing a restaurant or bar to allow those in with weapons. What would that do to the insurance? If you have to have the weapons in or allow the weapons, do you think the insurance industry would require higher premiums and higher liability?
I don't, Senator, first of all, I'm not sure I'm qualified to opine on insurance rates, but
just kind of use a little common sense.
Well, my common sense is sometimes different than other people's common sense, Senator.
Well,
but
I'm kind of seeing that on this amendment in the sense, you know, thinking about a restaurant that's going to have guns in there.
The restaurant has guns in it now, Senator. I mean, I think that is the premise by which we can all start and we can all disagree. The restaurant that you're talking about has guns in it right now, whether you like it or not. They're there.
Yeah, but if you look at the owner of the restaurant acting reasonably, then they may decide that they don't want it in there. And they have that right currently to put up a placard and not allow it.
Okay.
But under your amendment, they're doing nothing. They've got to accept it. And then they got to make the patrons safe.
They don't have to accept it. It's the law. If you want to analyze the risk, I'll go through it again with you, okay? The risk, in my opinion, is lower to have a group of trained individuals with guns in a restaurant than to have no good guys in a restaurant and only bad guys that are carrying guns in a restaurant. The risk, in my opinion, is lower. Okay? If you want a restaurant full of bad guys and no guns, or full of bad guys and guns that walk right past the placard, that seems like a pretty risky place. I mean, to me, that seems like a risky place to be.
I understand. Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, I know we differ. I got it. There's no further questions. I'll move to carry over.
Motion is to carry over the amendment. Those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The amendment is carried over. Senator from York, Senator Clymer. Stand at ease momentarily. We got it. The Senate comes to order. The Reading clerk will publish the next amendment.
The next amendment is Amendment number 5 by Senator Harpootlian, amends the bill section 3.
Senator from York, Senator Clymer, what purpose do you rise?
Be heard on the amendment.
Recognize on the amendment. Senator from
Mr. President, I
York is
unanimous
recognized.
consent that the Senate stand at ease for just a moment. With me
With you holding the floor, is there objection? There is being standing at ease momentarily with the senator from York, Senator Clymer, holding the floor. I hear no objections. We'll stand at ease. Senate will come to order. The senator from York, Senator Clymer, retains the floor on the amendment. Senator from Edgefield, what purpose do you rise, sir?
President, I want to see if anybody has any unanimous consent requests or announcements to make. We're getting close to the point that we probably need to take a break before the state of the state. So before I make those motions, I wanted to see if anybody has any announcements or unanimous consent requests.
State Senator from Lexington, Parliamentary Inquiry.
You said the senator from York was up on the amendment. Which amendment is that? Because the one senator from Coast, his amendment was carried over, I understood, from
He
Georgetown.
published the next
Number
amendment.
5, okay.
Amendment number 5 by the
Thank you.
senator from Richland. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You have a unanimous consent. Senator from Lawrence, what purpose do you state your request?
Political Affairs Committee, Senate Resolution 985, recognizing Disability Advocacy Day in early March.
Is there objection to discharging from the Senate Medical Affairs Committee S985 and placing it on the calendar? Heard no objection. So ordered. Senator, we'll do it tomorrow. Senator from Greenwood, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Unanimous consent request
State your request.
that the uncontested local third reading bill 972 regarding the election trustees district change in Greenwood be given a third reading.
Is there objection? Going to page 3 on the uncontested local third reading bills S972 by the senator from Greenwood. Is there objection to going and taking that up under third? But yeah, and with the senator from York retaining the floor. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Motion is S972, third reading. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The bill is given a third reading. Thank you, Senator. Senator from Edgefield. What purpose
Mr.
do you ask?
President, first an announcement.
You're recognized for an announcement.
Mr. President, I understand there'll be some members who may want to go over to the South Carolina Bars reception before the State of the State address. I've been asked to let everybody know that you should enter by halls. You can't get into the doors off Gervais Street into the facility.
Be off the Main Street's entrance.
Right.
Senator so informed.
Mr. President, if there are no other announcements or unanimous consent requests, with the senator from York holding the floor on this amendment, I'd ask unanimous consent that the Senate recede until 6:40 p.m. and then gather to line up for the State of the State address. And at the conclusion of the State of the State address, that the Senate stand adjourned.
Motion is that the Senate would recede until 6:40 for the purposes of lining up for the State of the State. And at the conclusion of the State of the State, the Senate would stand and adjourn for this Wednesday. Is there objection? It's unanimous consent. Any objection? Hearing no objection, so ordered. As we recede, I would like to notify the Senate of the Escort Committee for the State of the State, the Senator from Lexington, Senator Setzler, the Senator from Cherokee, Senator Peeler, the Senator from Beaufort, Senator Davis, the Senator from Greenville, Senator Allen, the Senator from Lexington, Senator Shealy, and the Senator from Florence, Senator Rickenbach, will be the Escort Committee. Again, we meet back at 6:40. The Senate stands in recess together at 6:40.